George Sharpe to the San Juan IQ, Energy IQ. So, we've known each other a long time. We have a lot of similarities, don't we, George? Both oil and gas guys and independent
Yeah, we've been
operators.
bumping into each other down here in the San Juan Basin for probably 20 years anyway. 30 maybe, Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
You're with
more.
You've been with Marion for
1990.
okay.
A lifetime. It's been a good lifetime, man. I
Okay.
can't.
Yeah.
Life isn't over. I got a little life left in me.
That's about the time I started San Juan Resources. So about the same, exactly the same time frame. So you were educated in college in Colorado, correct?
CSM, Colorado School of Mines. Yes.
Okay.
Got out in '82. Worked for Chevron for 10 years. 8 years. Worked the overthrust. Worked the CO2 flood in Rangeley when it was going in. Did a year in Bakersfield on some steam floods, and then had a chance to come back and work at Marion Oil and Gas. T. Greg and I grew up together. We were born on the same day back in 1950, running together in junior high. And anyway, we're good friends, went to school together, roomed our freshman year anyway in college. And so it was, I really never thought I'd want to work for T. Greg, but in hindsight, he's been the best boss anyone could have. He is an amazing person, and it's an amazing company. I'm lucky to be here.
That's great. That's great. Well, it sounds like you've been there a while, and so you were 76 high school, 80 college.
76 high school, 80 undergrad. I got a master's, and mainly to put me in step with my wife, who was up at CU and was 2 years behind me, and so we weren't married yet. We got married in '81, but anyway, certainly don't need a master's to work in the industry. But that's what I got. So
well, that's good.
Look good on my first resume, and after that, it didn't matter.
Yeah. Well,
so you asked when this all started. I've had a passion for education my whole life. I was on the school board for a while, and really, I guess probably for the last 20 years have focused a lot on energy education. We coordinate Energy Week, got that started. It's now been moved from the museum, started at the museum, Farmington Museum, moved to San Juan College. And over a 2-week period, we bring in 10 different middle schools, one per day, and run them through a program that tries to educate them about our industry, try to alleviate some of the fears they've been hearing, perhaps out in the community. And although we really have a supportive community, the fact that the school districts will agree to let their kids come here, my very pro oil and gas spiel, says something about this whole area. The people that are against oil and gas in New Mexico, all live in the corridor and don't live anywhere around oil and gas, and the people that support oil and gas are the people, in the Southwest and the Southeast and the Northwest part of the state that understand that oil and gas can be developed in a manner that protects the environment. And again, to live here, we have every reason to try to do it right and to make sure, that we have a safe place to live, work, and play. But anyway, I got going on these energy videos again, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and have probably a dozen educational videos on my YouTube page, everything from petroleum geology to how an oil and gas reservoir works to how and why we frack wells and why it's not getting into groundwater. And lately, my focus has been on climate change and its solutions. I'm a believer that man is impacting the climate. I'm not in the camp that says we need to do nothing. But it is not a hoax. What is a hoax is the absolute catastrophe that they paint, if we don't immediately get off oil and gas. And because we're not getting off oil and gas anytime soon. Not if anyone, nobody with a calculator believes that. And if you look at the EIA forecast, the EIA, a governmental agency, they don't believe the transition's happening either, because they're still predicting oil and gas will continue to grow in the United States through 2050, which is when we're supposed to be totally off of it. So again, the insanity of this push for all wind, all solar, all batteries, you know, nobody with a calculator believes it's going to happen. And, you know, so I tried to put together some math to prove that point in this latest video that I've done called the math to net zero. And it's clear that the current path we're on is heading nowhere. And we really need to change course. Natural gas with carbon capture and nuclear are really the two, they're the two energy sources that we know will work. We know we can rely on. We know we can do them. And yet, you know, if you look at New Mexico's mandate, doesn't say anything about nuclear, even though we've got the labs here, we've got the waste isolation plant, we've got all the, you know, we've got uranium reserves, we've got everything going for us to push the nuclear agenda, but instead we go down this idiotic wind and solar path that is, again, it's just throwing money into the wind.
We'll look forward to putting this on here. I'd almost call it a Reader's Digest of renewables. Do they work or not? I mean, you could almost have a title like that. So,
well,
myself, like you, we've done the IQ to expand people's knowledge, and at least with our folks out there who listen to what we put out there. So we've had a diversity of discussion, like with Robert Bryce and other folks who are real good experts. But
right. Well,
what do you want the listeners?
You know, it's not that they don't work. That's the deal, Jerry, is that they, you know, solar does work at noon on a sunny day, and wind does work, you know, on a windy day. They just don't work on a continuous basis, and people just don't understand how important that is. They also don't realize, you know, what resource, even though it works, how much stuff it takes to, you know, to capture that energy. Everyone's, you know, I made a presentation to just a week or so back, and you know, talked about all these resources that were, you know, you had to have. You know, the wind and solar are free, but the resources that it takes to capture that energy are not free, and they are not renewable, and they are extremely intensive. And she says, well, you know, don't you think in the future we'll have a way to capture solar energy that doesn't take all these resources? And I'm thinking, you know, in your fantasy, maybe, but not in reality. You can't capture the solar energy without having a solar panel to do it.
Well, we'll look forward to having our viewers watch the and listen to your tape, Math to Net Zero. And we appreciate your intro. We're trying to keep these IQs down to about 20 minutes. So how long is your video?
10-minute video. It's a 10-minute video.
Okay, so perfect.
You better turn me off and turn it on, Jerry.
Well, it's been great.
Right, thank you again. And Jerry, I want to, you know, from the industry, I don't think I thank you personally, and I don't think you get enough thank from the industry personally for doing these IQs. They really they have been beneficial to me. You know, I tune in as many, you know, if I'm available, I make sure I tune in, and I think it's a great thing that you do, you know, to try to share information among the industry and to share information outside the industry that is positive to our industry. So thank you for your efforts.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's a little bit different angle from what you're doing, but I think I think we all kind of, I mean, I look at it as you're just putting drops in a bucket, and hopefully the bucket will be full of rocks
Yeah,
someday, and
yeah.
people will
Well,
really
it's
be
a big,
glad that they had that
we're
information.
we're
So,
putting drops in a bucket with a big ass hole on the other end, man. It's a losing
yeah.
battle, I'm afraid, but you got to fight the fight, man. You got to do what you can do.
Okay. Well, thanks, George. Appreciate
All
it.
right, Jared, thank you very much. Appreciate
Enjoy,
the
enjoy
opportunity.
the video, everybody. Here it is, George Spark, Math to Net Zero.
Understanding energy, the math to net zero, why we are headed down the wrong path. We've done the science on climate change and know that we need to reduce our carbon emissions. But now we need to do the math on the solution and come up with a path forward that will actually work. Led by California and New York, lawmakers in state after state are passing mandates to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050 or earlier. Generally, these mandates call for a 100% electric world, fueled almost entirely with wind, solar, and batteries. Ironically, even the government doesn't believe these government mandates will work. Note that the EIA does forecast an increase in renewable energy consumption, but it is not enough to put a dent in our oil and gas consumption through 2050. You can't mandate math and physics that don't exist. So here's some basic math that explains why the wind and solar path forward just doesn't add up, why nuclear is the ultimate answer, but why natural gas with carbon capture must still be part of the equation. Energy sources are often compared on their instantaneous power rating in gigawatts, which is not a relevant comparison. They really need to be compared not in gigawatts, but in gigawatt hours, based on providing a certain amount of energy over a certain amount of time. In this video, I compare 4 carbon-free energy sources: wind, solar, natural gas with carbon capture, and nuclear, on a time equivalent and end use equivalent basis. In this case, what resources are required to provide 1 gigawatt of energy, the power needed for a small city, on a 24-hour continuous basis, or 24 gigawatt hours per day, for 20 years, the presumed life of the wind turbines and solar panels. Advocates seem to prefer wind and solar over natural gas or nuclear because they perceive that renewables have far less impact on the environment. In reality, the reverse is true, and here's the math of the matter. Number 1, there's a common misperception that 1 gigawatt of wind or solar is equivalent to 1 gigawatt of nuclear or natural gas. Because of intermittency and the need for storage, it's not even close. Let's go through the math of providing 24 gigawatt hours per day to a small city for 20 years. Because it can run virtually all the time, 1 gigawatt of nuclear would meet the demand. Meeting the need with natural gas with carbon capture would take 1.3 gigawatts of generation because of the extra energy needed to capture the carbon. Using renewables, 1 gigawatt of solar would only meet the energy need during the middle of the day, but would need backup generation to cover the nights. If you wanted to meet 100% of the 24 gigawatt hours of daily energy needs, it would take 4 gigawatts of solar operating 25% of the day, and 75% of that energy, or 18 gigawatt hours, would need to be stored in some manner. With a slightly higher 35% capacity factor, it would take 2.9 gigawatts of wind and 15.6 gigawatt hours of storage to meet those energy needs. Number 2, a 100% renewable world ignores the astronomical resource requirements of wind and solar, the very first resource being land. Using the example above, 4 gigawatts of solar would require 47 square miles of land, while 2.9 gigawatts of wind would require 143 square miles. A natural gas plant, along with the gas wells locations, would take right at 1 square mile, while a nuclear plant would require less than a half a square mile. Land conflicts are already a major barrier to wind and solar, and we have barely even started the transition to renewables. It will get nothing but worse as more and more land is required. The land is just the start. Meeting 1 gigawatt of continuous demand with wind and solar would require hundreds of thousands of tons more concrete, hundreds of thousands of tons more steel, thousands and thousands of tons of copper and other precious metals, and at least for solar, hundreds of thousands of tons of glass. Here's what Mark Mills, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, has to say about it.
To get the same amount of energy from solar and wind that we now get from fossil fuels, we're going to have to massively increase mining by more than 1,000%. This isn't speculation, this is physics. Copper, iron ore, silicon, nickel, chromium, zinc, cobalt, lithium, graphite, and rare earth metals like neodymium. We need them all. And then those metals and materials have to be turned into motors, turbine blades, solar panels, batteries, and hundreds of other industrial components. That also takes lots of energy, which requires even more mining.
Since most of that mining and manufacturing occurs outside the U.S., it is out of sight, out of mind, but it has a very, very real impact on the planet. Further, the U.S. is extremely susceptible to disruptions in an often unfriendly supply chain. Perhaps environmental impact and the risk to our energy supply would be acceptable for the first gigawatt. But the U.S. uses the yearly average equivalent energy of 3,300 gigawatts on a continuous basis, and the world uses 13,000 gigawatts and growing. So doing it that many times over would certainly be taxing on the planet. And most of that impact will have to be repeated every 20 years when the solar panels and wind turbines reach their end of life. The wind and sunshine themselves may be renewable, but the massive resources needed to capture that energy certainly aren't. It seems the green plan A to save the planet could take it to its knees. Number 3. One of the criticisms of natural gas is the amount of fresh water needed for fracking, as it takes approximately 20 million gallons to frack a 2-mile lateral. That sounds like a lot, but that well will provide a lot of energy for a long time, so it has to be put in perspective. It turns out that mining and manufacturing all the resources needed for wind and solar require approximately 5 times as much fresh water on an energy equivalent basis. Again, that impact is behind the scenes and never enters the conversation as a negative for wind and solar. Number 4. A 100% wind and solar world ignores the true intermittency of wind and solar power. There's not enough storage for a sunny, windy summer day, much less covering multiple days without sun or wind, which happen with some frequency. Because of that intermittency, even after mining all the resources and installing 4 gigawatts of solar and 18 gigawatt hours of storage, one would still have to drill wells and install a natural gas plant, because natural gas is the only rampable electrical energy source that can adjust to the frequent changes to wind and solar output. Further, the green energy plan doesn't account for the fact that solar output in the winter is only a fraction of the summer, and there's no storage system on the planet that will address that problem. The bottom line is that wind and solar will never be reliable and independent energy sources. Number 5. One of the biggest challenges facing a wind and solar world is lack of energy storage. Of all the storage options available, lithium-ion batteries are still the best. All other options have significant disadvantages, and none are applicable on a broad basis. However, to run the U.S. on wind and solar would require approximately 25,300 gigawatt hours of storage. At the end of 2022, the U.S. had only 30 gigawatt hours of storage in use, with 12 gigawatt hours of storage added just that year. At that build-out rate, it will take over 2,000 years to have enough storage to run the U.S. Even if the world had enough lithium to build that many batteries, it certainly isn't going to happen by 2050. And finally, number 6. Ironically, the various mandated paths to net zero don't call for more nuclear, the only carbon-free energy source that has been proven to work reliably, anytime, anywhere, on a grid scale. Nuclear is so energy dense that an aircraft carrier with 5,500 sailors can go 25 years without refueling. Unfortunately, the public perceives that nuclear is dangerous, although in reality, it has been the safest source of energy ever on a kilowatt-hour basis. The 3 major nuclear accidents all happened at plants built in the 1960s and 70s. Think about what your car or your phone or the computer you didn't have yet were like back then. The bottom line is that from the mining process to energy generation to the waste disposal, we can do it better now. And we have to, because nuclear is absolutely essential to a carbon-free future. In closing, let's count the reasons that the math on wind and solar just doesn't add up. Number 1. Don't confuse a gigawatt with a gigawatt hour. It takes 4 gigawatts of solar and 2.9 gigawatts of wind to generate the same number of gigawatt hours as 1 gigawatt of nuclear. Number 2, wind and solar require massive amounts of land, concrete, steel, fiberglass, and precious metals, with much of that impact having to be repeated every 20 years. It is not a sustainable plan to provide energy to the planet for the life of man. Number 3, wind and solar are freshwater hogs. Mining and manufacturing the materials needed for wind and solar requires 5 times as much fresh water as natural gas with carbon capture, and 50 times as much as nuclear. Number 4. Wind and solar will never be reliable and independent. Because there is no storage system on the planet that will cover multiple days without wind or sun, renewables must have rampable natural gas as backup generation. Number 5. There is not enough energy storage for a wind and solar world, and there won't be anytime soon. And finally, number 6. Nuclear is the ultimate carbon-free answer, and it is already proven to work on a grid scale. In summary, it is clear that the politicians' mandated path to net zero by 2050 will not work, neither in that time frame nor down that path. The EIA forecast of energy consumption down the current green path reiterates that point, predicting that wind and solar will still only supply a small portion of our energy 30 years from now. The bottom line is that if we want carbon-free energy that we can rely on, nuclear and/or natural gas with carbon capture have to be a major part of the energy mix. The sooner we accept that absolute reality, the sooner we can move forward with a plan that we already know will work. The end of this video anyway, if not the debate. The spreadsheet, which analyzes the impacts of the various energy sources on an energy equivalent basis, is not complicated, but it is extensive. If you'd like a copy of the spreadsheet and the sources for the various inputs, please email me at gsharpe@marion.bz. Thank you for watching this video, and if you feel the message is important, for sharing it with others. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can find other educational videos on energy. It's certainly a topic worth your time and effort to understand.
For over 50 years, Process Equipment and Service Company, or PESCO, has been proudly designing, building, and maintaining production equipment for its customers. Located in Farmington, New Mexico, PESCO sells and services units from across the western United States, from large majors to small independents like Sun Resources. PESCO is proud to sponsor the Energy IQ, and they look forward to working with you, supporting the San Juan Basin community in any way they can. Whiptail Midstream operates crude oil, natural gas, and water gathering systems in the San Juan Basin to handle growing production from the Manga Shale. With more than 500 miles of well-positioned infrastructure, Whiptail is capable of delivering 38,000 barrels of oil per day, 100 million cubic feet of natural gas per day, while gathering and safely disposing of 8,000 barrels per day of produced water. Whiptail is an energetic and innovative company, is happy to support improving our energy IQ.